This is a coffee chat. What exactly does that mean? Honestly, I'm not entirely sure, but it was requested, so let's go for it. Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and this is a coffee chat about negativity. I feel like I need a better name for this. Coffee and topics, topics and coffee, coffee and conversation. Coffee and conversation, that's the one right there. Maybe, unless I think of something better, but coffee and conversation for right now. Let's start this again. Let's completely re-roll from the beginning. Hi, this is Coffee and Conversation with Board Game Co. Now it got too formal. That's weird. Let's try this again. This is Coffee and Conversation. Let's have a conversation. This is mid-video. This is happening. We're just going to go ahead and move forward with this. It is what it is. We'll get to it. Coffee and Conversation. I still feel it's a better name, but that's not bad. We got the alliteration of the double C. And this is about negativity. Negativity in general, because I thought that a coffee chat, again, whatever that means, coffee chat technically has a double C. The problem is it's ka and cha, which doesn't have the exact same notoriety. A coffee chat conversation. Honestly, at this point, forget the whole negativity. It's just going to be about the name of the series. I don't know what it is. Let's dive into this. Negativity. This is just a conversation about things not related to board games. That's what coffee chat conversation. I gotta get the name down. I should restart. This series, whenever they show up, is going to be specifically about the concept of talking about things not related to board games. Not related to board games in the slightest. If you've made it this far, honestly, you're probably the target audience for this, because many people would have given up with those first 30 to 90 seconds of just me figuring out what the title is and whether I'm restarting all of that. It's nothing to do with board games, not in the slightest. It may tangentially relate to board games just because the nature of conversation is that my life relates to board games, so board games might come up, but it's not planned around board games. It's not about board games. It has nothing to do with board games. It's not board game content. It's just non-board game content on a board game channel. As far as how well these do, that's going to define how often they happen. But I always liked talking about other things. I've done so here and there. I've had different conversations when they come up, and I usually try to tie them to board games. This is not even an attempt. This is about negativity. The human nature of seeking out negativity. The negativity bias. It's called negativity bias. We as human beings are primed to seek the negative, and I think that knowing this is half the battle. I think that knowing this really drives us towards a solution before anything else happens. Understanding that we look to be negative, that we look for things that are going to give us a reason to be upset. I think it's the start of fixing that problem. And it is a problem. It's negativity bias for a reason, that we just look for whatever's going on. They've done this in many studies in different ways, and in left, right, and center. Like one general concept is the idea that human beings during wartime are actually rated as being happier than in times of peace. Because during wartime, you're kind of sitting there thinking, well, I gotta survive, and so I'll focus on survival. And everything else is a good thing. Everything that's not dying is a good thing, and dying is a bad thing, and that's kind of binary when you're literally just struggling to stay alive. I'm not recommending wartime. This is not a conversation about how people doing war have it better off than us. It's not the point. Please don't take the wrong thing from this. Please don't take the negative spin from what is meant to be a positive conversation. That would be negativity bias, and that would be part of this conversation. But then past that, they've done studying this on effectiveness of medicines. I remember one particular thing I heard on a Freakonomics episode, which really resonated with me, because it really is that human beings seek out the negative. We look for reasons to make ourselves unhappy. Whatever that next step is in our lives that brings us to the next level of happiness, we look for something to bring us down again. It's a problem, but it's not a you problem. It's a we problem. We all undergo this. Don't think there's something wrong with you. This is just part of life. And if you don't understand what I'm talking about at all, and if you're like, that's not true in the slightest, then great. That's awesome. And I'm happy you don't have that struggle. But the Freakonomics thing was the idea that they did these studies of telling people, hey, this medicine over here is 70% effective. And then they gauged what is your rating and opinion of that medicine. And the ratings were here. We're just going to make an arbitrary line. We're going to call it here. Okay, 70% effective medicine is here. When they phrase the same thing, the same packaging, same medicine, and they're like, this medicine has a 30% failure rate, and then they ask you your opinion, the happiness indicators were significantly lower. Significantly lower because it's a framing of the question, right? And you're like, that's not the same thing. It's not negativity bias. That's framing. You're right. It is framing. We're not done yet, okay? So in other words, it's 70% effective medicine, high ratings of positivity. 30% failure medicine, high ratings of not so probability, or low ratings of positivity. Then the interesting part is when they switch it, okay? What if they told someone, hey, this medicine has a 70% effective rating, and then they ask that group to measure how much they liked it, okay? And the ratings go here. And then they tell them after, by the way, that can also be phrased as a 30% failure rate, then people's ratings went down, meaning they drifted towards the negative. And that's true regardless of the order. If they told someone 30% failure, but that could be framed as a 70% positive, they still drifted towards a negative. In other words, in all four possible versions, only positive, only negative, negative then positive, positive then negative, in any element in which the phrasing that is negative existed, their approval ratings of the medicine went down. It's not just about framing. It is about if the possibility of a negative conversation could be interpreted, they found that possibility and they drifted towards that. We seek the negative. Negativity bias, it's a real conversation. Think about something you've lost recently. Think of the last time you've had a unexpected expense or something like that. You know, a car issue that you have to pay $300 to fix or whatever it is. Think about that. And think about the last time you got a $300 bonus or something like that. And think about which one improved your day versus hurt your day more. We seek the negative. We seek reasons to be upset. The things that cause us to lose money are often significantly more impactful to our general day-to-day happiness than the things that cause us to gain money. And this is not helped by the fact that news drifts towards negative as well. News in general is always a framing of the negativity because negativity sells. We click on negativity. We look for negativity. We don't want to watch, bringing it back to the board game space for a second. I remember watching recently a board game, King of Average recently had a series of videos on his channel, and all the negative ones do really, really well. And they did one where, the best 10 board game companies, and no one really cared. Not enough. We seek negative things in our life. We look for stuff that's just negative in nature. For me, on a personal level, again, to bring it board game adjacent, it's going to be comments. Any content creator knows the struggle of seeing waves of positive comments, and then that single negative comment that's like, I hate your content, or I don't like it, or you ramble on, or you do this, whatever the comment is, that tends to stick with us more. We can see all the positive in the world, and a single negative comment will stick with us more, be more present in our mind. We have to fight ourselves to overcome that. We have to fight ourselves to remind ourselves that there are people, far more people, who like what we do, and there's always going to be 5% who don't. We seek the negative, we look for the negative. Whatever the situation, whatever the case. If you think about the times, of the facts, of anything that ever you wanted in life, and when you achieved that, did the quality of your life actually improve, or not so much? You got the thing you wanted. You got that promotion. You moved. You found a new friend. Whatever it is you're looking for. You got that board game you've been hunting down. That Kickstarter that's going to make you happy, and you get it all. And there's another reason to be upset. There's another something that throws you off. We seek reasons to be unhappy. We are not content as human beings with the status quo. A line from the Matrix, the original Matrix, that also just sadly resonates with us, or with me, is the idea of Agent Smith talking to Neo, talking about how the original version of the Matrix was designed to make life perfect for everyone, but they had to reboot it because the humans just fought back. They didn't want a perfect life. They wanted reasons to be upset, so they had to introduce degrees of unhappiness and pain and misery because that was part of the human condition, and it stuck with me because it felt true. It felt like we want to be happy, we want to, but we find all the reasons to be unhappy along the way. Negativity bias is a real thing. So what was the point of all that? The point of that is that I think awareness is a starting point around it. Think of a car that the alignment of the tires are off. Because I think it's a big deal. If your alignment's off and your car drifts one way, if you don't realize your car drifts one way, you might just let it continue to go. Fortunately, we have these lanes that show us that our car is drifting drastically off to the side, and you course correct. If you know your car alignment's off, if you have a reason to understand that you're not driving in a straight direction, you course correct. I think understanding that we seek negativity, give me a second here because I forgot that the coffee is an important part. Speaking of seeking negativity and seeking positivity, I think that just knowing helps. I think knowing that we seek the negative is already enough of a reason to understand that our alignment is off. Understand that the next time you're having a bad day, think about it. Process. Why are you having a bad day? What's getting you down, and is it worth getting you down? There's a separate conversation about whether you should be gotten down at all about these things. If you get a speeding ticket, you already got the speeding ticket. Do you also want to ruin your day? That is a separate conversation, and it's part of it. It goes back to this conversation of, sometimes the good things happen and we don't let it improve our day, so why do we let the bad things happen and also ruin our day? Good and bad will happen. How you reacted, how you adjust is up to you. There was I'll link to it down below if I remember, there was a fairly famous America's Got Talent singer at one point, who was America's Got Talent, I think it was America's Got Talent, who, she was dying of cancer. And she got on stage, she's so upbeat and positive, and then she talked about the cancer, and they're like, oh, the cancer's in remission. She's like, nope, not in remission. It's there, it's present. I have like a 1% chance of survival. And they were like thrown off and shocked. And she said a quote, I don't remember the exact quote, but she said something along the lines of, you can't keep waiting for everything to be okay until you decide to be happy. And it's such an impactful quote, it's such an impactful idea. The idea that the decision to be happy is up to us. There are factors that bias us, and understand this is a relevant part of the conversation. This is not a conversation on mental health that extends past our normal day-to-days. There are people who will struggle with this harder and in more different ways, and there are reasons why people should or could see a therapist, take medication, do all those things. This is more guided around the general human condition as opposed to anyone suffering more. Okay, this is not a magical solution of, hey, just throw a smile on your face and cheer up. All your depression and issues will go away. That's not what this conversation is intended to be. This conversation is just a conversation. Just a chat. If you have anything that's more serious, speak to a professional and don't take advice from a guy on YouTube who talks about board games all day long. Happiness is often, for many of us, a decision. It's a decision that is biased by conditions in our life, by people in our lives, by impacts in our lives. It's a decision that comes with bias. That's absolutely true. It is harder for me to be happy when bad things are happening than when good things are happening. But also we seek out the bad things. Both things are true. It is a decision to take a situation, to take a context and decide that, okay, the bad thing is happening and that's where the bad thing ends. Again, I can have a ticket and I can ruin my day, or I could just have a ticket. The choice is up to you to a degree. Biased, yes, but the final decision point is yours. And so knowing all this helps, knowing that we seek the negative helps, knowing that when you're having a bad day, there's a decent chance that it's because you have a degree of negativity bias in your life and that you could look past those things. These things help. And add more positivity to your life, less negative. Find the reasons to be positive, and finding the reasons is a big deal, by the way, in general. Like a very interesting concept, especially if you're a parent, by the way. That's something you deal with if you're a parent as well. And parents in this audience, I think, will understand this to a degree, but it's so easy to look at your kids and just get stuck on a rotation of negative and neutral and not so much positive. Pack your bags, go do your homework, brush your teeth. Again and again, statements said to your children are very often either neutral or negative. Stop hitting your sibling. Do this, do that. It's like, and neutral is neutral. Neutral is still a command. It's a thing that's said. How often do you pause and say, great job, I love you, you did such a good job taking care of your brother, I love the way you talk to your sister that way, I love the fact that your teachers told me they did a great job, or I know we've discussed this in the past, but like you really, really put a lot more application towards your homework. It is so easy to get caught up in 80% of just neutral command-based statements that aren't a positive builder for a relationship. They're just neutral. And then a whole bunch of negative because the stops are easy. Get out of bed. Do your homework. You're late to school. I can't believe you did this. I can't believe you let me down there. What about this? What about that? It's so easy to get caught up in all of that and not focus on the positive. That's true as a parental relationship. It's true in a general relationship. A general spousal-based relationship, it can often be lost with that too. Directional. Can you pick this up? Did you get that? What about this? Did you change the light bulb? When are you adjusting this? When are you doing that? Where's my shirt? So much of conversation can be stuck in the neutral and or the negative. And there's so much to be positive with. There's so much to say and to add, and we don't necessarily add that back into our life because we're primed to just keep moving, to seek out the negative, to make issues out of tiny things. Again, going back to spousal relationships, think about the last time you were in a relationship with somebody and you fought over something stupid beyond belief. Whether it's you have a spouse who leaves the lights on overnight, and you're like, why can't you just turn the lights off? Like, the degree of just nonsense present in that conversation is just insane. Sure, turning the lights on overnight, turning off lights overnight would be great. You know how much electricity you actually waste, what the actual cost of that is? And you're prepared. You're prepared to add a degree of conflict and frustration into your actual relationship over 3 cents? Like, maybe it's not 3 cents, maybe it's 17 cents. Whatever it is, we seek fights and issues and conflict over small, tiny, petty things that aren't a big deal. Okay, could you stop leaving your shoes by the door? Yeah, you could. But also, if you phrase it differently, it might be more likely that that happens. And if you phrase it the way you are phrasing it, you now just add a degree of conflict and frustration into your relationship over shoes by the door. We're so primed to make our lives worse at times. We're so primed for this kind of conversation. Say nice things. Do nice things. Add more positivity. Start a gratitude journal. This is a big thing. I'm a huge fan of this. Start a gratitude journal. Whether it's a physical journal, whether it's a little email, whether it's just a note to yourself in the morning, a little reminder that goes off on your phone that boom, you have to list 3 things good that happened to you in the past 24 hours. And no, you can't repeat it. You can't sit there and say, oh, well, I'm grateful for whatever. The same thing again and again. It has to be different. It has to be situational. You can't just say, I'm grateful for my husband. You have to say, I'm grateful my husband did X, Y, and Z. I'm grateful for the fact that I woke up today and I just felt so energetic compared to usual. I'm grateful for the fact that when I was out walking, I got a call from a friend who I haven't spoken to in a while, and there's a great conversation. Find the specifics within the day and write them down. And there's studies that show that finding those things, that listing the things you're grateful for, there are multiple studies that show that gratitude is well correlated to just a positive impact on your life. Because there is so much to be grateful for. There is so much positive in our lives, and we forget that, and we frame it as negative, and we look for the negative, and we have to course correct. We don't have to course correct. It's a choice to course correct, but it's a choice that it's a choice that will bear fruits upon your own life. Do it for a while. Do it for months. Do it for years. If you're constantly acknowledging the reasons you have to be grateful, then you're focusing your focus, that's what you're doing. You're putting your focus on the positive instead of on the negative. There's always going to be things to complain about, I guarantee you that. But the impact of the things that are there to complain about are often fairly minimal, and we take so often for granted the things that are positive, and there are so many positive things we have in our life on a day-to-day basis, things that are both static day-to-day and we forget to remember them, as well as things that change. And you know what? The day you're getting over that bad cold, yes, on your gratitude journal you can put in the fact that you didn't have to blow your nose today, which is something we take for granted every single day, and we forget it until we're blowing our nose and coughing up phlegm, and suddenly we wake up one day and we're not coughing anymore, and we're grateful for that. Same with any sort of injury or anything of any kind where you get a sprain or something like that, you can't use your hand properly for a week, and suddenly you could, and suddenly we recognize and appreciate this thing that we've been taking for granted our entire lives, and it's better now, and we can actually use our hand again and start doing two-handed operations where for the past week we kind of were half managing. We take a lot for granted. A lot of things that we can appreciate. Not just body parts, but people in our lives too. People in our lives. There's so much to be positive for. And when you are having a bad day, focus on the why. And think through it. Because this happens a lot where sometimes you're just in a bad mood, you're in a bad funk, and you just let it affect you. But ask yourself why. Right now, if you're in a bad mood, if you're having a bad day, ask yourself the reasons. Ask yourself that. And try to process what is the actual impact and how bad is it. Just today I had an issue which was stressing me out the whole day. Although the whole day is probably not a stretch because I processed it, I went through it, and it definitely stressed me out to a degree, but I kept on pushing it to the back because it wasn't an issue. Where I had this internet issue. I was like, I don't know how long it'll take to fix when I eventually get around to fixing it. And I just let that sit there. And then eventually I sat there and fixed it, and it took me 20 minutes. It was not a big deal. But the fear of fixing the thing ended up bothering me the whole day because I was prepared that I might lose 4 hours in it. But first of all, what's the big impact? Fine, so I lose 4 hours. That's not the end of the world. Secondly it's more likely it'll cost me 20 minutes. But I just sat there and I let a thing get into my head and get in the back of my head scrolling away of well, this is irritating. Why is it irritating? Because I might have a negative impact later today. Most or many negative impacts. And again, if you're an exception to this, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the general situation. Most to many negative impacts that we go through on a day-to-day basis have a minimal actual impact on our lives. They are small things that we find the opportunity to be upset about. They're small things that we find the opportunity to let them get to us. Even though the actual impact isn't that present. Whatever it might be. Your AC's out, okay, so you'll be hot for a day or two. It's not the end of the world. It really isn't. It's frustrating. Someone at work's irritated with you, well, what's the impact? Are you going to get fired? Are you not? Most of the time we worry. There's another quote that I remember. I can't remember the exact quote, but it's something along the lines of, we spend so much of our lives worrying about things that never come to pass. Which is so astoundingly true and sad. It's one thing to be upset about the thing that happens, but we spend so much of our life worrying about the things that never come to pass. It's sad. And when they do come to pass, reframing is relevant too. Reframing the negative that you have, the negative that we're going through, in the context of the negative or the positive that others have or don't have, is a big deal as well. And again, frequent reminder, there will be people who are watching this who are actually going through something incredibly problematic, and this is not applied to you. This is the concept of the AC, for example. Your AC is out. Okay, great. We'll take that problem. My AC is out for 2 days. Well, you know what? There are people who don't have AC. There are people who don't have the funds, the resources where they live, who don't have AC. You know, you're having some issues with your kids today. They're really like being a little bit more difficult and really stressing you out. Well, there are people out there who are desperately trying to conceive and having a hard time doing so. And so they wish they had your problems. That can be applied to a relationship too. You're fighting with your spouse a bit more. You wish your spouse was doing X, Y, and Z. Well, there are people who are still trying to find their significant other, and they're having a hard time doing so, and they wish that they had the generally positive but occasionally frustrating relationship that you have. Most problems you're going through in life can be reframed as the things someone else wishes they had in their life. This goes back to the general concept of we take things for granted and we look for the negative. We forget what it's like to actually have the bad as we're getting the good. The net takeaway for all of this is just the idea that we as human beings are primed to seek out the negative. We're primed to see the bad. If you're having a bad day, remember that. If you're having a good day, remember that. Remember all the many, many, many things you can be grateful for. And it doesn't mean don't try to change your life. Always try to change your life. Always try to improve it. But also, when you hit that point, remember how desperately you fought for that point. Whatever it is, the new thing you wanted, the new job, the new stay, having another kid, whatever your situation is that you were looking forward to that next thing. Remember how much you were looking forward to that thing and how much it was going to improve the quality of your life. And then understand that if it hasn't, the next thing won't either. Maybe, just maybe, there's a chance that the quality of your life is up to you. The way you perceive things is up to you. What you take out of a situation is up to you. A question I used to enjoy asking, I still enjoy asking, I just haven't asked it in a while. I like sometimes asking these hypothetical questions. But one that I remember asking one time was, I used to ask a lot, is if you had a choice, would you rather be poor but happy, or rich but unhappy? The amount of people that struggle with that is interesting. The amount of people that struggle with the premise of the question is fascinating. There are a handful of people who immediately, without question, answer poor but happy. Done. Most people struggle with answering it all, and some people say rich but unhappy. And it's just an interesting concept, because what's the point of money? If I can guarantee you you'll be happy, why is the money the question? Why are you seeking out money? And it's because we often aren't as obviously looking for happiness. More often than not, we're looking for the thing that we think will make us happy, but we're not looking for happiness itself. Happiness can be found. Happiness is a state of mind. Happiness is perspective and the way you engage with the world around you and what you look and what you see and how you see it. Happiness is not something that is bought, purchased, the next situation in your life. You can't always keep waiting for everything to be okay to decide to be happy. It really stuck with me. Someone who was dying of cancer, who understood that life isn't perfect. Life never is. But the degrees of negative and positivity that we see is less about our circumstances and more about ourselves. So that's our coffee and conversation today. Just a conversation around negativity, happiness, seeking out the good, reframing and understanding the bad. And the bad will happen. The bad will always happen. This is not a conversation about bad things not happening. This is a conversation about the fact that whether you're unhappy about them, that's a different conversation entirely. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Hope you enjoyed this conversation. And as always, have a good one.